You're listening to Nurse Converse, presented by Nurse.org, a collaborative podcast amplifying diverse nurse voices. Get ready for a dose of inspiration, a sprinkle of education, and a whole lot of community.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Nurse Converse Podcast. I'm your host, Carol Simpson. And before I introduce my guest, Jackie Noll, I want to take a moment to say one thing. Leading up to this episode, I had asked for suggestions on ideal topics from some of the audience, and people responded with some really tough topics, kind of leaning in to the difficult things that are really impacting our profession right now, like patient incivility, staffing crises, diversity in nursing leadership or lack thereof was truly what was suggested. There was a suggested topic that there's a real divide between nurses and their administration, whether it's real or perceived. So people wanted to dig into some really hard topics. And I hear you. I see you. Those topics are real. Those topics are important. And I think we need to dig into them as this season goes on. I made a choice to start with the topic of gratitude practice in nursing. I wanted to set out on a positive note because I think that nurses at every stage, in every role, even in a state of exhaustion and emotional distress, can really benefit from this information. So I'm going to ask you to stick with us for the next 30 minutes or more, and I'm going to introduce my guest. Jackie Noll is one of my former leaders from a job or two ago. She's been a nurse for about 40 years, maybe a little bit more. I asked her how long she had been a leader, and she said all nurses are leaders. So we can talk a little bit more about that. I chose Jackie because she's had the study of gratitude on her mind for probably as long as I've known her. She's presented locally, nationally, and soon to be internationally on the topic of gratitude in nursing. The type of leader that Jackie is, she's dynamic. She's always focused on her team. She's always focused on patients. No matter how hard she's driving toward a goal, she never loses sight of people. And I think that the way that she leads, the way that she inspires people will hopefully transfer to you today as well. So Jackie, do you want to say anything before we get started?
Carol Simpson, I feel you. I have to tell you, it's a great way to start a new year. Looking at gratitude practices, it's not just something that you make a resolution and then 28 days later, you hope you're following it. It's really creating a learning journey. And I hope, as we chat today and we take a little look into how this affects nursing and what we can do as nurses, we're going to learn a lot that will leave people really well prepared to handle some great days and with gratitude and some not so great days. So I'm so honored and genuinely ridiculously pleased to be your first guest.
It's going to be fun. So leading up to this, I had started reading some articles about gratitude practice, and I was surprised to learn that there are actual physical, mental, and workplace benefits to a gratitude practice. Can you say a little bit more about that?
The research behind gratitude has been around for a really long time, but I think in today's healthcare world, we took a look back towards it because there's so many things we've learned that can benefit our current workforce. The readings that I would like to share, there's one by Burton. It was a Wharton study that talks about what is happening at the cellular level in your brain. So you and I and all of us have been put on this earth as surviving humans, and we've done a great job at scanning the world for what could harm us, what could hurt us, like right back to the caveman days. But what we haven't built circuits around is developing an ability to scan for the positive. So the research is showing that when you start to create that new lens and look for things that are out there that will drive positivity, that you create these neural pathways. And the more you create them, the stronger they become. Our brain releases dopamine and serotonin and kind of bathes our brains in chemicals that will create that positive lens. And it's not only creating a habit and a way for our brain to think moving forward, there's huge health benefits from doing this. We know that it can lower blood pressure and improve our mental status, improve our relationships. There's so many somatic changes that we can go through when we actually genuinely express and feel gratitude. And it all goes back to, the chemistry that's happening in our brain. I and you have talked about it, like we are nurses, we are scientists, we have science in our degree. I think it's a really healthy place to start when you think about what we're going to talk about really has some deep roots that create really good pathways that will help us live a better life.
Okay, so that makes sense. I did read a quote from somebody named Barbara Fredrickson, who is a researcher at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And she said, the negative screams at you, but the positive only whispers. And so it sounds like what you're saying is, we're kind of wired to always be looking for what's threatening us or looking for what's bad. And so sometimes we need to really be looking for what those positive things are. So let's dig into that. So then how do you start? Why this? Why in nursing? Tell me more about gratitude in your nursing practice every day or in any practice.
Well, it's a great question. I have to say, you don't wake up one day and say, I'm just going to turn on the gratitude button. It's a journey that people take and they start to realize the upsides and the benefits. And for me, I'll just tell you kind of why I started to get interested in this. So we all show up to work, right? We're working in busy units, busy outpatient clinics, you name it. Nurses are everywhere, home care, in society, just helping. Are privileged often to have colleagues that we work with. And as you start to show up for your shift or your assignment that day, you look around, right? And you say, wow, I get to work with Carol today, or I get to work with Becky today. So I'm going to use Nurse Becky as an example of what really kind of made me think like, what's this all about? I would watch her energy, her positive ability to get things done, to talk to patients on really trying days. And I thought, I'm going to be like Becky. I want to start to find out what makes her tick. And the one thing I noticed time and time again is she expressed gratitude, whether she was weighing a patient on a scale, whether she was helping them at the bedside. There was always this moment, and she expressed it differently. She would say, you're the best at this, or I'd love to, thank you for all the kind conversations we just had. And I realized the more I started to emulate that, the better my days went and the better my shifts went. So that made me pause. And, then as a nurse science person, we take a look back and we're like, there's something behind this. So for me, like just getting into gratitude was really about trying to create a really better experience for myself, my colleagues, and my patients that day. And I found it. And so that was the entry level for me. And your point earlier is well taken. I can be a leader with a title, and that's a wonderful thing, and it gives me great responsibility. But every nurse, and I mean every nurse, as we all know, is a leader. You're leading that patient through their event, their course of stay. You're coordinating things across a hospital. You have so many leadership hats on as a nurse. And I would say, as a leader, all of us have to pick a professional platform. And it became very obvious that mine was going to be gratitude because I saw what it did for my team and I saw what it did for me. That was the beginning.
And so I did read a quote that says cells that fire together wire together. And so just thinking more of what you're talking about, it sounds like those neural pathways are, they kind of get started, but then the more you practice, the more you keep going. It's like practicing any sport. You get better and better and better at that. And I believe that's called Hebb's theory. I think there was a doctor named Hebb, and I don't want to misquote, but basically that the stronger those neural pathways become, the more likely we are to start seeing the good in life and not always be looking at those negative things or becoming defensive. And so can you give me an example of sort of how you do this at work? So it doesn't matter which job or whatever. Can you give me an example of just sort of a day where maybe you applied gratitude and what the impact was?
I love the question too, because all of us have a choice when we show up at work, right? We can think about what our day is going to look like. And to practice gratitude at work in nursing is really a very conscious choice. And it just doesn't happen because you walk through the front door of the hospital or the place that you work. It's something that you have to kind of build into your day. So I do this thing where I call it like stop, look, and listen. It's something that I try to practice every day when I'm working. And also, by the way, when I'm not working, I like to use it in my regular out of work life. But first, you have to create some pauses in your day. And they could be a pause while you're in the elevator with somebody. They could be a pause at an exact time that, I eat lunch around 1 o'clock if we're lucky to get lunch. And I'm going to do this then. But during that pause, like have a moment of reflection, like genuinely tell yourself a story of something that touched you. And, as nurses, we can become like not seeing what other people would see so obviously because it's in our midst every day. We see human nature at its most vulnerable stages. If you would bring a friend or a partner or anyone to the hospital or your workplace with you, I think they would just be like a deer in headlights at times for the things that you manage as nurses, that we all manage. And what I ask you to do is think in that moment of reflection, like, what did you see? Did you see a tender moment where somebody was helping one of their elderly partners out of a car? Did you see a child going down the hall who clearly looks like he has some kind of medical issue happening with an IV pole, but a smile on his face? Did you see somebody hold the door for somebody? Did you just see the sunshine today? Like, you can take it at any level, but give yourself the moment, and it's a moment, and gratitude can happen in any moment. Like, give yourself the moment and the grace to have that opportunity to reflect. And when you think about it, like, feel it. Like, just don't think, yeah, I saw somebody open the elevator door. That was great. Like, think about, like, wow, that was really kind of that person because they were probably hurrying to do something and they took the moment and they just showed me human kindness. So I would say one of the ways you can practice it in the workforce is to kind of build those moments in that mindful living, really. And then sometimes, even alarm clocks on our wrists or our phone don't help us on a busy day, right? We're rushing, we're doing things. But is there something that you wear? Is there something on your stethoscope? Is there something that will remind you of being mindful and grateful? So I'll give you examples of what I do just as an example. So, like, I have bracelets and my bracelets have words on it, like gratitude or faith. As I'm typing or doing a note or anything, I look down and there it is on my wrists, reminding me, wow, I have an obligation to give myself that moment. Sometimes it's something you could put on your stethoscope. It could be a quote. It could be something that someone's given you that's a little cherished and you want to have near your heart at all times. But when you see it, you'll reflect and have that mindful moment. For me, I have an office. So behind me, there's a bunch of things up there, but some of them, as I walk in on a busy day, I can look and I collect sea glass. So there's a jar of sea glass. And in that jar, every sea glass represents a moment where I've walked with a friend or a family member. I don't pick up most beautiful sea glass if I'm by myself. I always want to be connected with somebody. So when I look at that beautiful jar of sea glass, I'm reminded of all the good things in my life, the good people in my life. So, create your mindful moments, but create reminders. Carol, like, do you have any reminders?
Well, I don't necessarily have reminders, but and when you and I were preparing to talk about this and you had told me about stopping and looking, I always say that my favorite thing to do when I'm crossing avenues in Manhattan is to look up and down the avenues, because I think you will always see something that's so beautiful. Sometimes you'll catch the colors of the sky, sometimes you'll catch the street lights changing with all of the taillights on a rainy night. There are so many things that I kind of look around at and say, these are so beautiful and amazing, and I'm glad that I stopped to do them. But I think that in nursing, right, as people are working so hard, they're working in really difficult conditions. We've even talked about people getting punched, right, at work, spit upon, people who are in, a really difficult time, just kind of with moral distress. How does even that person start to do a gratitude practice when some days you don't feel like you have all that much that's just going so well in your day? What would you say to that person?
We know that really tough stuff happens right in front of us and to us as we're working. And we know good things happen too. But in those tough moments, like, obviously the priority is to handle what's happening and deal and listen to your body and what you need, whether it's time to heal, time to reflect, time to process, time to get help. Like, there are those really hard moments we're all going to experience. But where I would challenge myself is, after those moments, look back at it. And was there someone or something that helped you in that moment? Like, if you're dealing with a violent situation at work with a patient who's out of control, did security step up? Did your colleagues help out? How did you get out of that situation? In the moment, you're dealing with the concern, right in front of you. But as you reflect back, there were people there that were probably reaching out. Or if you lost a loved one in your life, like, obviously traumatic, no one wants to ever have to go through grief, right? But where are your lessons from that? Like, if it's somebody you love dearly, think about the times that you spent with them, or think about the times that you still have to spend with others. Like, you'll find things to be grateful for that are triggered by these traumatic moments, but they're not going to jump out at you. They're going to have to be something that you think about a little bit. I think I shared with you, Carol, like, I live in a short town and there's lots of birds down here. And every morning there's wires up there, and I see on a sunny day 10, 20 birds all together, and I think, there's my team. Look at them go. They're all helping each other. What a sunny day. And some days it's a little windy and maybe there's 5 up there, and I think, wow, they're holding on. But I love the stormiest days when I see one bird and then I see another one struggling to get over there. And I think, that bird probably is looking around thinking, thank God I had this one buddy who didn't give up on the fact that we have to be here today. So I would say on those really tough days, look at your colleagues, look around you, find that individual that's standing in the storm with you, because you will often find yourself very lucky to have that person in your career and in your life.
No, that's a great point. I think that some of my greatest friends in nursing were made on night shift, on the hardest night shift you could ever have, changing the chemo soaked sheets of a 200-pound patient, and that person who walked in the door with a basin of hot water and warm blankets for that patient is just like, you saved me. And she's still one of my great friends. Hi, Sarah. I know Becky too, right? Like, we're talking about these people that have really impacted us as nurses. And I think that they probably both have that similar spirit of seeing the really good things in situations, even when they're a little bit rough. And so that's actually a really great example. So one thing I also noticed when I was researching this topic is that the ANA has a toolkit around gratitude. And that kind of surprised me. I think of the ANA when I think of the Nursing Code of Ethics, or I think of the ANA kind of weighing in on really big nursing topics. So why did they pick up gratitude in the last several years?
Well, if you think about the last several years and the impact that it's had on the practicing nurse, it's been something that we couldn't even anticipate in our lifetime, right? And we already knew going into the pandemic that we were going to be facing a nursing shortage, and that this is a very valued career and we have to do a lot to really make it strong. So I think, besides the Nursing Code of Ethics, I think the ANA really realized that nurse well-being stands out as a major initiative for our workforce. And as we talked about earlier, there is no greater predictor of well-being than the use of gratitude. Like, it's linked, it's proven. So the ANA set out and did a series of podcasts, and we're touching on a few of the things that they get deeper into, but it really helps you understand the science, the practices, the opportunities, like how to lean into gratitude. And the whole goal behind that is to really get our workforce to the healthiest possible place we can, so we thrive in our future.
Okay, yeah. And you did mention a healthy workforce, and that makes sense that the ANA would be, looking toward that. I did read another article regarding Chinese nurses who were asked to journal 2 times a week for 4 weeks. And the control group did no journaling. There was a group who was to journal about all of the hassles at work. So basically, probably a big diary of complaints. And then there was a group of nurses who were asked to journal about things that they were grateful for during their week. And so that did actually show a decrease in depressive symptoms, a decrease in perceived stress for the group that was gratitude journaling. And that was a randomized controlled trial, which, for those who don't kind of know, that's the most rigorous form of doing research. And so I have actually read some articles about, improvements in the nursing workforce. So that does make a lot of sense.
Can we talk a second about journaling, though? Because I love that you brought that up.
Oh, perfect. Yes.
We have, the opportunity to create the mindful moments, do the stop, look, and listens. But what really makes it meaningful is that you create a structured process, and journaling has been proven, as you described, hands down, in a very effective way. And there's just a few points I want to make about it. It's not related to our circadian rhythms. So whether you work night shift or day shift, you can do it. And it doesn't have to be a certain time of the day. There are times of the days that make sense for you. And it can be on an app in your phone. And while we don't endorse any app, believe me, there's plenty out there. It can be on a piece of paper or in a book, which you can snap a picture of if you want to remind yourself of what you wrote. But it's that one time where you're taking your mind and you're creating a quick story, and it can be sentences, it can be one sentence, it can be 5 sentences, but you're capturing it. I'll share with you that my favorite time to do it is 10 o'clock at night because I'm a little bit of a evening shift person in my style. And so that's a time for me that I'm winding down and getting ready to go to sleep. And I want the last thought of my day to be myself telling a story about a moment of gratitude that touched me that day. And I scan my day and I think, what is it? Is it that my dog, did something silly today? Was it the smell of cookies? Was it the fact that I got to reunite with my granddaughter when she came across country? It can be anything. Was it a colleague? Anyway, I jot it down. What I've learned is it's fabulous to go back and read your history of those when you keep them. But it's even better if you have the opportunity once in a while to share it with someone. It just enhances your own feelings of gratitude, and it's a gift to the other person. So there are many ways to do that. If you snap a picture from a book, you can always text somebody. If you are in a gratitude app, you can always send it to them via the app. There's so many creative ways. And for my crew, like they may not be up at 10 o'clock, but when they wake up in the morning, that's the first thing they read. So it's such a great gift. So I just want to spend a minute to point out the importance of journaling just because it's a key underpinning to how to create a practice for yourselves that not only impacts yourself, but others.
So I've heard about gratitude journaling, and I know that you've even talked about a sneak attack of a sticky note, just kind of putting something on someone's computer screen. And you had shown me one before that somebody had left on your computer screen that says, "You inspire me," with a smiley face, and how meaningful that was to you. And actually on that day, I had turned my computer and shown Jackie that I keep all of the little thank you notes that people write to me because they're so great. One just says Happy Valentine's Day, and they had left me a Rice Krispie treat on that day. But it was so meaningful. And so I do kind of keep those around to just be a really quick expression of, look at all these really great people around me. And I appreciate them and they appreciate me. And it does kind of make my day sometimes. So I love the sticky note. I like the idea of a gratitude journal. They're easy to download. I did it the first time Jackie told me about it. It reminded you every day too. It was kind of like, hey, did you journal anything yet? And sometimes I was reaching. I mean, every day isn't sunshine and roses, but I could generally find something to be really grateful for each day.
It is a little bit of an effort, but the sneak attacks, which you mentioned, just a quick little unannounced thank yous that can happen anonymously, they're easy to do. And when people are tired or they're really thinking, I don't have the energy to do all this right now, I would urge them to just do that. Find somebody that they're working with next shift, write a quick little sticky note, stick it on the computer they're documenting, and just for a moment, quietly step away and watch the expression and the reception to your action. Like it'll be motivating. It will be something that will help you see the value and maybe get that next step of energy for, living this kind of grateful life.
And the way I understand it is the person who receives the gratitude gets the dopamine rush and the serotonin rush, but the person giving it also gets a lot out of it. And so I do think it kind of puts both people into this sort of good cycle, right? The vicious cycle of good is what I like to call it. So yeah, I love that idea. And one piece of advice you've given me over however long I've known you is think about how you frame your gratitude statement, because thank you can sometimes just get lost, right? Like we say thank you everywhere. Thank you for holding the door. Thank you for my change at the grocery store. But can you say more about just sort of that way of framing up the way you experienced what you're grateful for?
Thank you. I can say that there are so many words that can express gratitude, like I appreciate you, enjoy working with you today. But what the listener really values, and in my experience, is when you make it a little bit more detailed and a little bit more meaningful. So, of course, I still say thank you, and that's a great, great word. But when I want to express gratitude, I spend a moment and I think about what was I expecting, what was the behavior I saw, and what was the impact. So, for instance, think about two nurses working a really busy overnight shift and they're looking at each other thinking, are we going to get through this? This is busy. We're getting admissions. There's lots going on. And through the night, one nurse maybe has a pretty tough assignment, but she notices her colleague is over there grabbing vital signs for her, helping get a patient to the bathroom, helping update a phone message or whatever is needed to get through there, giving a med for her or him. And so through the night, that nurse thinks, wow, I'm so grateful that I'm working with my colleague. So maybe a way I would express that a little differently than thank you last night, Carol, for being a great colleague is I would say, we both started our shift and it was a very busy night. And I was expecting to be here way past 12 and a half hours. The fact that you gave meds for me, the fact that you gave vital signs for me, the fact that you fielded admission calls for me was amazing, simply amazing. Like as a result, like, yeah, we might be getting out a little bit late, but I don't have to, it's breakfast time. I don't have to be here at dinner still doing my notes. And I just want to let you know how much I appreciate you. So if you set the expectation or what you're experiencing, and then you look at the behavior you want to note with gratitude, and then share your personal impact from that, people feel that and read that differently. And in my experience, I've watched people read an email where it says, thank you so much for contributing to the meeting. And I read the more deeply described, like detailed gratitude comments, and they just resonate more. And I think for the person saying them, it's very thoughtful to take that moment and pause and think a little deeper. And for the person receiving them, it sounds so much different than thank you. So when you have the time, like it can be an email, it can be a verbal conversation, just try that extra effort and see what it gets you.
No, I
think you'll
love
be
that
pleased.
idea. I think a lot of people have said thank you to me, and I'm sure I can call to mind some thank yous. But one thing that has stuck with me since apparently February 20th of 2018 is a text that you had sent me actually at the time that I was reporting to you. And I believe we had a really tough week. There was a lot of change going on. There was a lot of, interesting things happening. And I'm going to just look at my phone for 1 second and read a text that Jackie had sent to me, because here we are this long later and I'm still thinking about it. And so the text says, this is 2:20 in the afternoon on a Friday. And I remember this day because I recall telling my direct reports that I need to do better at thanking them because I read what Jackie had written to me. So it said, I can't tell you how much you impress me every day, every minute, every second. You have had an all-star week. I'm the luckiest person in the world to be your colleague. Please keep it up. I don't know how I ever lived without you. That was really laying it on. Your, your team is so lucky. Enjoy the weekend and all of these accomplishments this week. So that probably took Jackie a minute to write, but here we are this many years later. And sometimes I still read it to myself because I think as a leader myself, I could probably do better at making sure my team feels appreciated. I know that in some of the greatest workplaces, a culture of respect and of gratitude is actually part of what makes them really great places. And so if you were talking to a leader like me, how would you say that you could start to really infuse this and start to, try to re-engage people in understanding kind of their impact and how grateful we are to have them at work?
Well, first of all, that I call a magic moment. It's one of those moments that in mindfulness that really is magic. The fact that your phone and you have not deleted a text message from 2018 is magic, but that you got to share it back to me is unreal. So thank you. That was really super special. I think as a leader and to the leaders that lead me, I think we have to be very purposeful about calling out the importance of gratitude. I mean, we always talk in nursing about reward and recognition, and recognition means different things to different people. Like you might like a Starbucks card, I might like a big letter written to me. Everybody's different, right? And gratitude, you don't have to be so precise, but you have to be purposeful, and you have to look for ways to find those magic moments, those simple moments that are good. I would say one of the practices that I know is strongly supported and does well is as nurses get together, we have meetings, right? Huddles. We always talk about safety stories. I hope you're doing that. We're doing that. Like we're top of mind. So how about you start a huddle or a meeting with a safety story, but how about you end it with a moment of gratitude? And that could be something you're sharing with the team that you lead, or people on the team are sharing amongst each other. Sometimes you can go around the room. Sometimes one person can just leave a great thought with others, but it's a great habit. And I think it's a way where you're sharing with your team, like, this is important. Like, we have to recognize each other, even for small, grateful moments, big ones too, but small ones, and they're easily delivered. So I would say, talk to your leaders about, how do we practice this? Are there ways to put it into our daily lives here at work? And how can we make it something that we each think about each day?
I love ending
And
huddle that way. I love the idea of just sort of like throwing the recognition, particularly if you have a huddle board, to be able to put it on the board and have it there, either stay for the day or stay for the week. It's really nice to come back and kind of see that somebody took the time to recognize you. So that's a great idea. I know I can get better at this. I know I can get better at this as a leader. So, Jackie, I will say we probably have to start wrapping up, but what I will tell the audience is I will be writing an accompanying article to this podcast. And so we will link a lot of this great research. We can't get too deep into the neuroscience. Number one, I don't understand it all that perfectly well, but I know I need to read a little bit more of it. I think the ANA toolkit could be a really valuable tool for people to also read and sort of see what are the suggestions from one of our kind of main organizations that we look up to. We will also do our best to link any other really important information that accompanies this podcast. But what would you leave the listeners with if you were giving them three major takeaways to this podcast, or three ways to start, or just what are kind of your most salient points to wrap up today?
I think there's three big things and takeaways that I think about when I think about our discussion today and the topic of gratitude. One is, I want everyone to know that it serves two purposes and provides two gifts when you practice gratitude. Clearly, thinking genuinely and thoughtfully about another is a gift to them, and it brings joy and many good things. But equally, it's a gift to yourself. And in a workforce that's working as hard as nurses do, we need to give ourselves that gift. So I would say, think of it as a two gift moment. I would urge you to continue to look for opportunities to have magic moments and mindful living. Take that stop, look, listen, pause somewhere in your day and see what you discover, and start to make those moments happen on a more regular basis and build those neural pathways that'll keep you scanning, and you get better and better with practice. So I think that's the second point. And the third point is, don't forget, all good habits require some structure. And I would urge everyone to consider journaling, whether it's brief, whether it's not every day. Don't put pressure on yourselves. Often as nurses, we're like, oh my gosh, I skipped a day. Now I'm going to give up. Like, start it. Like, be proud of what you do. When you look back at those journals, feel them, share them. I think that habit is a really good habit for the future of nurses and our practice. So it's a two gift moment. Practice your mindfulness and start those journals. That would be my wish for everyone as we start our new year, and lean into gratitude as much and often as you need to have those positive days.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, if there's a practice that feels this simple, that can actually change how we feel about each other, our physical health, our mental health, our decreasing cynicism, absenteeism, having just a better outlook on work, I can't imagine that people wouldn't want to partake. I did see in the 2023 State of Nursing, which Nurse.org had kind of surveyed 2,000 nurses. I thought the results actually looked promising. People felt that they were in a better state than they were in 2021. I think that's probably, I hope everybody's getting a little bit better from that time. They still think that there's high level of burnout, but they think that, a lot of people are kind of coming back in a way. And when I read the results of the question for what made you want to become a nurse, and the fourth most common answer was that a nurse inspired me. And I loved that. I feel like this is a little bit, I mean, most of it was I wanted to help people, of course, but the thought that a nurse inspired somebody else really also touched me. And so I want to believe that we are coming out of a really, really tough season of nursing, and that, we'll all be moving forward in a positive way. So I thank you for sharing all of this positivity, as you always do. And I hope that everybody from Nurse.org and anybody else who's listening enjoyed the podcast. And if you did, I hope that you'll like it. I hope that you will share it. I hope that you will comment and that you will stay tuned. Follow us on social media or whatever platform. We'll also attach that to the article and keep coming back. Nurse.org's got this great new podcast in 2024, and there's lots of really great hosts. There are 10, probably 9 that are, really just so different than me. And so I hope that we all bring you really great information this season. And Jackie, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Enjoy, everyone.
Thanks for joining Nurse Converse, brought to you by Nurse.org. Help us grow by leaving a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Nurse.org supports nurses with career and education tips, life advice, and breaking news. Thank you for all you do and for being you.